All right. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Mustang Robotics Symposium series. This is the official episode one. Last week or earlier this week was our test or pilot episode. My name is Jacob Ursua. I am one of the producers, and I am here to introduce to you today the host of the show, Mr. Chad Pearson.
Hey everyone, welcome to our presentation today, and I hope that for anyone who's joining us, we have a wonderful time interviewing our guest for today, who happens to be a Mustang Robotics VEX alumni. But first, my name is Chad Pearson. I am a advisor for the Mustang Robotics VEX oriented program in Chula Vista, California. We are located at Otay Ranch High School. We're a program that's been in existence for about 10 years. And one of the benefits of being around for a little while is we're able to invite back this year alumni to provide us some insight into what robotics did for them and how that robotics experience followed them into college. And later on in the symposium series, we'll get to students where it's followed them all the way into their careers and then their life, and it's become a major part of what they do every day. And so today we have a guest of a young lady. Annika is here today, and Annika is a alumni from a few years ago. She's graduated in 2017. In 2015, I believe, we went to Kentucky for the World Championships. I'm proud to say Annika was on a team that was able to capture a state championship with their notebook. And that to us as the Mustang Robotics program is wonderful and incredible. So we'd love to invite Annika to the meeting today. Annika, how are you?
Hi, Mr. Pearson. Hi, everyone. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome for being. We are thanking you for being here because we're kind of stuck in a pandemic right now, if you haven't noticed. And for all of my audience out there, most of us have this tendency right now to be building things and working on things and wanting to create this robot for competition. And with that not being available, our club decided to be really creative to reach out and see what people are doing right now. And so, Annika, knowing that you're one of our more recent graduates we invited on back, and also knowing that you just graduated from UCSD, we felt like you were a wonderful person to start this entire symposium series off and get us going. And so if you don't mind, you want to give us a little bit of a rundown about at least Otay Ranch High School, Annika, young lady, how we get into Mustang Robotics, what else we're doing on campus. And it's a great starting point because I think that's where most of us are right now, even myself, stuck in high school.
Yeah, sounds good. So first of all, like Mr. Pearson mentioned, I was class of 2017 and I'm recently UCSD's class of 2020. And I was actually not one of like the robotics kids who like went into high school knowing to do robotics, and then it was like my entire passion the whole time. I had no idea it actually existed until I had Miss Salazar my sophomore year, I believe, for chemistry. And you have to do your spiral notebook, and me being me, like I did it a certain way that kind of caught her eye whenever she would check it, and she was like, hey, like, you ever think about robotics? And I remember looking at her and going, I'm not an engineer. Like like I have no interest at all in being an engineer. And like right now I just got my BS in cognitive and behavioral neuroscience, so like I definitely did not touch it. And I don't plan on it anytime soon. I'm not exactly gifted in math. So yeah, it was definitely a shock for her to offer it to me, because I think at that point I knew like Mark and Patrick were in it and Richie.
So in a little clarity here, Miss Salazar is my predecessor. And so we're actually talking right now about the original mentor advisor of Mustang Robotics, who politely left once I kind of came on board and was like, oh, hey, he likes this too. And we're also talking about other students that were on your first team. And so like that, a little bit that needs to be explained, especially for those who aren't Mustang alumni. For those of you out there, we do have a classroom setting that has a lot of our Mustang history in it. And so if you ever do come into our robotics room, we have posters and we have pictures and we have the history, and we're getting better at collecting that history. And so a lot of us would know exactly who Steven is and Mark is.
Mhm.
But in this case, these are your team members. These are people that you actually join up with, right? And so Miss Salazar is actually hiring you at that time. She
Yeah.
knows she needs someone to do this notebook, right?
Mm.
So you have this interaction, and Miss Salazar is like, hey, this robotics thing, what actually brings you in for real? Like, what makes you jump into Mustang Robotics junior year or sophomore
Yes.
year?
Yeah.
Junior.
So yeah, I only spent my junior year and senior year in robotics. And honestly, like a lot of it was just being impulsive because I was like, well, if somebody else thinks I can do it, then why don't I try at the very least? Like my mindset was, even if I don't personally like at the moment feel like it's the place for me, like somebody thinks that I belong there. So like I should at least honor that and like try it. And like if I don't get in, no harm done, at least I tried. But I remember finding myself at the 2-day interview tryout process and just kind of like wanting it at that point. Like it kind of became this thing where it's like, well, I'm trying now. So like I should really try and like actually get it. Like, and then, like at the time still, like I had no previous experience because I think it was only after I tried out that I found out my cousin Leanne, who is also a Mustang Robotics alumni, and I think two years older than me.
2 years older.
Yeah, and so like I had no idea she was in it either. So all I knew about this club was that they built robots, and she apparently has managers too that like write stuff in a notebook. Like I had no idea what I was in for. So like I did my best, and I was looking at a lot of the returning students, a lot of the alumni who volunteered, and then I was like, okay, well, let's just do it. And then
And at Otay Ranch, I think what's interesting is after a while you start to feel out small clubs versus larger clubs, or small school programs versus larger school programs, and we're actually at the size where there's students who have to try out and don't make the team. And so when you're in this moment, this is a little different if you happen to be out there listening to this and you're at a school program and you only have like 3 or 4 kids at it and everyone makes the team. You're in a room full of students. You have alumni who are in their 20s in the room. They're asking you all these crazy questions about robotics, and the desire to want to be in that club around those kids bid in. Okay.
Yes, definitely. I know that now that you mentioned it, I was shocked to see like the amount of people trying out, and then like I remember you always start, like it's always been this way, how you see all of the people who are trying out, and then like kind of off to the side are the returning students, and then up on the front are alumni. And there was just something about like the cohesiveness, and I guess in a way like the loyalty to Mustang Robotics that also drew me in, because like it's like what you said, like you see this amazing club that is bigger than you thought it was, and apparently has enough of a lasting impact to bring all of these people back even in their busy lives. Like I know like this is moving forward a bit, but I always wanted to be there after I graduated Otay to like help in the tryouts and the interviews, because like I don't know, like even if I was just there for the last 2 years, I just feel so invested in it. And like even if I'm not an engineer, even if I'm not gonna like directly be like applying the obvious parts of Mustang Robotics, it's just become a part of me that I don't expect to lose anytime soon. Like I just love it.
So you get into Mustang Robotics. You have an incredible first year there. You have a lot of support. You come into Mustang Robotics as a junior, and you're handed 10 examples of previous notebooks, and you're able to interact with her cousin Leanne Mendoza, who happens to be an alumni who did the same job. And so you have this insight. You got some family giving you some info here, but you start to do these tasks, and you actually start to love them. I remember this, like the group of kids, the friendship, the bonding. Now that you look back, those tasks that you were doing, what jumps out as, oh my God, thank God I did that because it was practice for college? What kind of things jump out of that notebook orientated, team orientated approach of collecting that data, because I think that's important for a lot of students to realize. This is a direct relationship to what is expected out of you when you get into college your first year. And a lot of people don't have that practice of having those interactions and that teamwork and the team dynamic and the weird demands of time and everything. So what did you think when you got into college and now that you look back? And I'm jumping over the idea of VEX, but I think this is important because it's reflection upon the high school part. What was important about the notebook that you took with you to your medical program, basically?
Oh man, I could honestly go on about how much Mustang Robotics taught me and how like I've seen it really help me grow even further in UCSD. Like for example, like the team dynamic. I'm not athletically inclined, so like I was never in any kind of sport or not any kind of like team environment really. So I know that putting myself into Mustang Robotics with all of these people who have all of this like kind of experience, all this knowledge about robotics and engineering, it was intimidating and I did feel out of place a lot. But if there's anything I learned, it's being really transparent with who you work with, but also putting yourself out there and being willing to learn. Because I know that if I let that intimidation, that fear of being somewhere where I didn't initially feel like I like was supposed to be in, like I would have left after that first year. But I really, you can learn a lot by the people around you, and that goes for, you know, not only like Mr. Pearson and Mrs. Salazar and your own team, but like everybody else that's in Mustang Robotics and everybody else in the VEX program. So like a lot of it, and like this went into my experience in college with student government, is that you you learn so long as you put yourself in the position to learn. And as long as you surround yourself by people who are willing to teach you, because chances are the people around you really want to tell you what they know. Like, I remember a lot of my teammates, like when I finally worked up the courage to be like, I don't know what, like, for example, I was like, what's the difference between a C channel and like a chassis? And it's, you know, like, it's a, like for those of you who have experience with VEX, like that's such a stupid question to be honest. And I really felt that way. So like as the person who was documenting all of this information, I was like, oh my God, they're gonna laugh at me because how am I supposed to document what they're doing if I have no idea what they're even using? But you know, like they were so happy to explain it. And like I remember one of my first teammates, Justin, he went on this like whole like tangent between the different types of like pieces, and I was like, oh wow. But you know, it's very insightful. Like people have a lot to offer you, and what I found conversely is that you have a lot to offer them as well. Like I like ended up feeling like a lot of untapped skills and like talents in that was like in me get channeled into this program that I don't think would have happened if I like went into something else. Like I don't even know. I wasn't even considering clubs really. And like that's another thing too. Like robotics taught me to be active. Like just do it. You know, like don't be afraid of what people think about you. Like if you love it, then you don't need any other reason to do it aside from that.
Very true. So you have this incredible junior year where you jump in, you're on a team with a lot of sophomores, one senior, things kind of click. We make it through a season. If I'm correct, you guys are wearing Timo hats or something, or that's either the year before.
No.
No, I gave up
No.
on that. And then we get to the state championships. I believe we're in Pomona, and we realize we're not in a bad spot. The robot's not the best, but man, we got some other things going for us. So what do you remember about states that year? Were you excited, ecstatic, sad? Like, how did that go for us?
So I vividly remember states that year because it's like you said, like we had like some problems with the robot. And then I remember just kind of like sitting there with our captain and the only senior on the team, Brian Ty. And then we were just kind of hanging out. And I was just kind of like, when is this gonna be over? Like we're not gonna be in like the finals, I think. Like we learned a lot, like, but you know, this is painful. But and then we end up having this interview with one of the judges, and like we're just talking. And at this point, I remember like talking to this judge and just being like, yeah, just kind of tell him what he wants to know. Like nothing's really gonna come out of this. And then they're announcing the awards. And I'm like talking to someone, like I'm not even paying attention to the awards. And then all of a sudden, like you and Mrs. Salazar like start pushing me. It's like, it's you. And like I'm like, personally for me, I don't know about the rest of my team. Like I'm walking forward and I'm like, what is this for? Like, which award is this? And then we get the trophy and it says State's Champion Design Award. And like as a manager, I was like, what? Like,
But that
like,
reflects a lot upon what you were doing with the team. A lot of that documentation is reflected in that design award, being able to communicate it.
Yeah, and so I remember like I was just like quiet. Like they pushed us to the side, like we took pictures, like I was holding it, and I know I was shaking because I was like, is this real? Like, did they get this wrong? Is this supposed to be like D or E? Like are we sure it's B? Like 507?
Are we sure it's this team for Mustang
like,
Robotics?
because like I just started that year, like I said, so I honestly did not think that my notebook was at a state that it could help the team get this award and like move forward to Worlds. And so it was so eye-opening in a way where it's like, don't discredit yourself too early. Because I remember even like on the ride home, I was like staring at it, like I was holding it in my hand and I was like, design award. Like I was just looking at it because
Annika, you literally have never let go of that award, have you?
I have not. I still haven't.
I'm so sorry, people. That is the only award that doesn't live in our classroom, and I'm imagining it'll never come back. But in reality, if you're not a VEX kid, the connection to winning that particular award at States means you get to go to the World Championships.
Yes.
So now you're following the path of other Mustangs before you. And for everyone out there listening, Mustang Robotics has a tendency of being incredibly hard workers. And so Annika's 5, 6 deep in that yearly cycle of us going to the World Championships. She's like the 5th or 6th team in a row that we've taken year after year after year. And we've been really blessed to be able to kind of keep that cycle going with the kids that joined the club in the current group. And so we jump on a plane. I think your group and me flew all the way to New York, and then we came back to Kentucky.
No, I was actually on my own with my dad. I think ours was the only direct flight.
Yeah, lucky you. Yeah. That was 6 hours less. We get to Kentucky. I got to tell you, I've never been to a place that smells like so much grass. It had just rained. Yeah. Green as far as you could see, but not a mountain you can find. And we get into this room at Worlds, and I think this is the ultimate moment for a VEX kid. And for some of us, we get to live it. For some of mentors, we get to live it. And for some students, you hear about it and you watch it on TV. And so first you walk into one of the biggest buildings in the United States that holds competitions. How do you feel when you walk into that moment, knowing where you are and you're a club from San Diego, California?
It's honestly, so like, interestingly enough, it is both the most humbling experience, but also the most uplifting experience. Like there was like this combination of like just experiencing the actual magnitude of the VEX program. And then there's also this feeling of like, we made it here, like we did it. And it's like, even though there's like, it's global, like there's so many more teams that stand on like so many different levels in comparison, but it's like to be able to work with your team and your advisors and your program to make it to this point, it was just amazing. And it's like, even though it was only a couple of days, it was one of the most fun because like I said before, like I've never really been in another club. And then so to join one and then to get to kind of like one of its like highest levels, the first time I was like, wow, it's like I kind of like went through a whole lifetime of being in a club in 1 year. Cause it's like, I got that experience of, like really trying hard to find my place in it, like learning how to do it, feeling like I didn't do enough, and then like going like to Worlds. And it's amazing. Like it touches so many people's hearts, like both parents and their kids alike, and like and teachers and advisors. And you really see that, like you walk in and there's just huge banners and like stalls after stalls of all these different teams, and like you see the flags, you see like USA flags, you see people from China, people from Iran, who I actually got the privilege to work with because I was actually an ambassador. So not only was I there as a competitor, but I was also able to work as a VEX Worlds ambassador. So like what that meant was that I was assigned to one particular country, and I kind of helped them through it. And like, you know, we were together and we talked a lot, and it was great. It's like, wow, like I've never met anyone from Iran before. And like now it's like this national team who's here representing their country. And because I think it was their only team.
Yeah.
Because like with the USA, there was, you know, like we're big, so there's a lot. I think it's a couple, at least a couple per state, is it?
Mhm.
And so like being able to kind of talk to this other team from this entirely different culture and entirely different part of the world was very interesting, because again, like you got to see exactly how widespread VEX Robotics was. And I'm like literally still at this point where I'm like, I still don't even know what VEX is. like wow, this is great.
And so that everyone understands, mentors have the ability to sign students up when they go to Worlds and actually volunteer their students to work. I have a lot of faith and respect to the kids I get to work with, and we have a lot of independence that's set up in our program. So immediately you guys are independent when you work with me. And so we tend to have anywhere from 3 to 6 kids be ambassadors when we go to Worlds every year, and they get to have this experience following and shadowing another team and assisting with that. And so we get the Worlds, you have a wonderful time. It changes you. I know it does. It changes me every time I go. You come on back. We have senior year. Senior year doesn't work out exactly the same, but senior year has this wonderful moment that we got to pause and every kid in the group wants to hear about, which is signing up for colleges. A lot of them, Drew, you specifically, they're going to be like, what exactly did you write on your app? Because you made it to the school I want to go to. But more in a philosophical way, you had your choices. What directed you away from one choice and more towards UCSD? Because UCSD has an incredible background for oceanography. For those of you guys out there who aren't from San Diego, it's script oceanography, #1 in the world, has an incredible robotics engineering program with the Jacobs School of Engineering. Mm-hmm. And that's not necessarily what you jumped into that school for. So I'm sure there's other options. What makes you want to choose UCSD and why?
So UCSD, luckily for me, has been my dream college since I was young. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it was my mom's alma mater. And like I just remember growing up, like my aspirations in regards to a career always shifted. Like I was like, I'm gonna be a scientist, you know, like the super vague childhood dreams. And then it was like things like, oh, I want to be a microbiologist like my mom, or a psychologist. And eventually, right now, I'm actually applying for master's programs in forensic psychology. But what really drew me to UCSD was like it just felt like home. Like, yeah, I mean, I did want to kind of go out of my city and like kind of be a lot more independent, but it was, you know, like it has like this family tie to it. And I just love like the nerdy aspect of UCSD. Like I'm sure like most of you who are applying or like just have like some kind of knowledge about the UC system know that it kind of has like this reputation being socially dead or whatever. But in my experience, it just socializes differently. And that's the exact kind of thing I like. Like I'm not a partier kind of person. And I was always just kind of like at peace with kind of just rolling with like my nerdy crowds, but like my also super fun crowds. And honestly, I feel like if I hadn't gone to UCSD, I wouldn't have tried being in student government. Because just like robotics, and something I found in my life experience so far is I tend to enjoy the things that come to me unexpectedly and very unexpectedly. Like I had no, like I was not in ASB. I was class president like my freshman year, but then in Otay.
Yeah.
But then I kind of like left that alone because I was like, I didn't really do much. And then so I didn't have any intention of doing student government. So I think like one of the good things about UCSD is it kind of gives you that feeling, at least for me, of like being able to start anew, but being comfortable in doing it. Like I know that if I maybe had gone further, that would have been kind of like the cap at the moment of me trying new things. But being at UCSD, it not only did it have like the major I was most interested in because it's unique in the way that it's a joint major between cog sci and psychology, but it was just so calming. Like, you know, it's next to the ocean. You have these people who aren't like so competitive that if you like miss class and you ask for notes, they're gonna be like, no. Like they're so kind, and it's just like this perfect balance, I think, of being very academically inclined but also being very social. So yeah,
And
like
I think what I hear from you is first you start with this idea you grew up having that school in mind anyways. And that's a hard one to get. That's like picking your favorite sports team. That's a hard one to get rid of and
yes.
change, right? But then we actually run into, and I need the kids to hear this, it's shortlisted because it actually really truly has the combination of the two things you want to study. And once you start to research and start to determine a direction you're going to choose to go, having a program that is more directly fit to that outcome allows you to walk through the pathway of school a little bit faster.
Oh
And
yeah.
so you, and we'll give them a little wonderful now, but you were able to walk through your program and graduate in 3 years, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And some of that honestly could be the idea that the program was aligned in such a way that it had a little bit less classes responsible. But family support had to have helped. You're in your bedroom, right? You at
Yeah.
home. You could always ask mom to like help with some. But that idea of guys sometimes going away is great for you. And if that's the only factor you're looking at to make your college choice, I would suggest that you look at the things that are supposed to really matter, and having that idea that supporting your subject area is really that draw for you. And guys, we've heard more than once from kids from UCSD that the social dynamic there is different, and that social dynamic is not the entire in place goes to the same place at the same time to like watch a football game. But what she's explaining is it's a campus that has small group structure to it, where you find that you more buddy up like a robotics team. In a weird way, you kind of find your little social group of kids. They could or could not be in what you're studying, but you kind of follow as a pack through college, and you have fun together. But you did reach out, which is kind of cool. And I think for this episode that we wanted to have, we actually want to hit on this year one, year two, and what did you do as a freshman? What did you do as a sophomore to establish a really good flow of school, not trip and fall, and we know this happens. That first year of college can be really rough and tough. And so, how did you approach that first year of college? Surround yourself with good people and pick a couple things to do that didn't draw you enough away, but actually involved you with campus life.
So I actually spent my first year of college almost completely dedicated to transitioning to a quarter system. So as some of you may know, the UC system, aside from Berkeley, is I think almost exclusively the only undergraduate like set of universities that function on quarter system. So it's 10 weeks of really fast, really intense learning. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. So I knew to consider that going into my first year. Like I know a lot of people I met were like, oh, I'm going to go to the organization's fair. I'm going to join this club. I'm going to go to this general body meeting. Like I'm going to try all these different things. But I was like, I think I personally need to take a step back and like just kind of feel like the workload of this. Because what you'll find is your first year and your third year are going to be your most difficult. Because typically your first year you're transitioning into it, and your third year, for whatever reason, tends to be the year where you take your hardest classes. And so yeah, like I was at my first year was really calm actually. Like that's when I kind of like hung out with friends every now and then. went in, like above and beyond studying. Like I actually did my readings, which you should do. But you know, like I was really focused on that side because you go to college, yes, for these experiences to meet new people, but you're paying for the education. So like it's definitely important for you to know what your workload is and what your work ethic will become, because I guarantee you your work ethic in high school will be very different from your work ethic in college. I am a very proud procrastinator. I still am, but I can tell you that it is like 50 times harder to do in college when the amount of information that like 1 week of high school classes jam into you for 1 hour. And that is not, unfortunately, an exaggeration, but it was good. And so by the time I got into my second year, I knew exactly what to do. Like I knew how much I could procrastinate because let's face it, I never stopped. I knew how much in like what my best study tactics were. Like I knew who to study with, like what fields I had the most difficulty in. And then that was the point where I was like, okay, I'm gonna start joining things. And it was actually at the end, I believe, of my first year that I got a job at the registrar's office. So I kept that job up until I believe September 4th when I officially ended my undergraduate
So
experience
you
at
were getting
UCSD.
paid? Like
Yes.
you actually got a paycheck from it?
Yeah. So like I worked with and this was actually something robotics helped me in because it was a audit programming job, which means that in short, I would be the one to program people's degree audits. So like the the document that shows all their classes, all their grades, and then I would help them fit it into the certain requirements or like allow it to take the place over certain things. So I ended up doing that for the almost 3 years that I was there. And then my second year, I joined two types of student government. I don't recommend doing that. It was very difficult, but it was a very fun experience because with UCSD, they have the college system. So at the moment, they have 7 different colleges, and I think they're planning for 10. I don't know how, but they will. And so essentially, it's like big living, learning communities. And it's what Mr. Pearson was talking about. And this is what makes the social dynamic at UCSD different because it's not like, for example, SDSU, where everybody's just an Aztec and then that's it. At UCSD, you are both a Triton and a member of your college. So for me, it was Eleanor Roosevelt College, and they specialized in building global citizens. So a lot of the focus of ERC, in short, was history and writing, while other colleges like Warren, well, where a lot of UCSD people from Otay went, and their focus is engineering. So you see kind of the relationship there. And so each college has like its own different skill set. And so I ended up joining ERC Student Council as a basic needs advocate. And then I also joined the campus wide student body, Associated Students, as the social sciences senator. Very long titles, but in short, I had one focus group and then I had the entire UCSD group. And they're both very different. And I definitely learned a lot about like leadership and teamwork. And it was crazy. Like at this point, I was regularly taking 3 to 4 classes each quarter. I was working part time, and then I had these two government jobs. It was fun.
Now, the government jobs are not paid, and they're more a social dynamic of campus, less the idea of a true government structure, more in some ways a glorified party planner for the group of kids. The club structure really is trying to orientate the same way Mustang Robotics would have a president, and we bounce a lot of things off of them. But what I hear from you is if we separated those jobs, you would have had a lot more pleasure in them. And like neither of them was horrible. They were actually enjoyable, but together it kind of ruined the idea of the fun of it because it was too much.
Yeah. So I definitely learned that like take your time. And I know that I did this because I spent my first year just focused on my academic life that I felt like I had to compensate for that. But it's like you really don't. Like do what you can handle. You'll quickly find out what you can handle, and once you get that, like your mental health like in college is like your lifeline. Like
Yes.
as long as you're there like mentally and you know you can do it, like go ahead. But if you're tired, like take that break. And that's what I ended up doing my third and final year, where I dropped the student council of ERC but kept my senator position. And the senator position actually, because the responsibilities for AS associated students is much more intense and heavy than student councils. It did have a stipend. It was like a weekly stipend, and for a senator, it's really nothing much. It was like $20.
Yeah.
But it was really cool. Like it was that one put me in the position where I was consistently talking to the dean of the social sciences division.
Okay.
I was on committees with all these like top dogs. Like I got to talk to Chancellor Kosla, which is like the head honcho of UCSD. And it's really cool. Like going back to what Mr. Pearson was talking about, like in hindsight, looking back at Mustang Robotics, I know Mustang Robotics was like the first place where I got used to talking to like
Oh
adults who I felt like knew so much. And then so that definitely played a part in my role as a senator, because like I mentioned, you have to be on committees and you have to talk with all these people. Like I think at one point I was on admissions committee, and these are literally the people who decide if you get in or out, and they have like one or two, maybe three sometimes student voices in there to be like, what do you think? And
yeah.
you know, like as somebody who like very recently understands the struggle of admissions and understanding the process of how like colleges even look at you, like, am I just a number? Do they even like care about what I do? They do. I swear to you, they do. And it's nice to know that, because you get to go on this side where you feel like only the adults go, and then you get to be one of them, and you get to say like, no, that's not fair. Like why would you consider doing that, or like why wouldn't you consider doing that in order to make the UCSD campus more diverse, more inclusive? So yeah, it was definitely really interesting. Like I was a lot more involved than I thought I would be in college.
So when we talk about that last government position, and that sounds like something you still use when you apply to your next degree.
Mhm.
So along the way, we talk about filling all of these little requirements of things you can claim on your high school, like career,
Yes.
and it kind of sounds like you repeated that again, where you brought some sort of club and activity into your high school that then maybe actually helped you get into college, and then again you've dedicated a little bit of time outside of studies to something else on campus that's considered social life, and that dynamic you're 100% guaranteeing is a positive if you for a student on campus, right?
Mhm.
And this is something that we've talked about before. Your cousin brought it up when she came and visited with us and talked about having that outside of just school release and having
Mhm.
something besides that. So you hit a couple other ideas. I know the entire group right now, whoever's here is like, oh, she knows things about emissions. I got 85 questions about exactly what to write. And then I think that's an interesting thing because where you're at, um, do you have advice? Do you have a gut feeling that you could give them a little direction on what to avoid in your application? Because there are common things that people put in that are like I'm imagining people are like, oh, again, that kid did
Mhm.
that, like the last one, and they're kind
Mhm.
of faux pas is what my nana would used to say. Like we're
Mhm.
not really supposed to do that, um, frowned upon. So if we can look upon some information here that allows us to take something we felt like we wanted to write in our app and put it to the side and replace it with something that actually counts more.
Mhm.
What are those lists of things you think that schools maybe want to see?
Okay, so first and foremost, don't don't go in undeclared if you know what you want, because your major is capped. Because it does not mean that once you get into the university, you'll get into a cap major because you switch. Like that is like my highest recommendation, and this is a point that the admissions committee always touched on, where if you're going in under, for example, um visual arts, but you secretly want to go into computer science, but you couldn't, you thought your chances would be better of getting into UCSD, for example, because computer science was capped, you're more likely than not going to get in either way. So it's like, pick the university that, like Mr. Pearson said, that has that program you need, because like I guarantee you, taking the closest approximate to it because you found out you couldn't get into a capped major is the worst thing you can do. Like I know a lot of my friends who couldn't get into computer science took like physics or math, and they were like, I didn't get to learn what I needed to learn.
Yeah.
Like it was just a bunch of stuff I didn't care about. So definitely like don't underestimate the power of your chosen program, your chosen degree program.
The research part into making sure that what you think you want is really important.
Yeah.
And trying to make that connection between that dream job and that actual degree so that you can narrow down the colleges and find the ones that allow you to have that quickest path through college.
Yeah.
And UCSD is definitely known for not letting you swap, what you started with. If you go into that campus and you choose you're going to do one thing, well, you're kind of stuck unless you want to go somewhere else.
Great. Yeah. Okay. And then another thing too is like, don't be intimidated by the reputation of the college. Like I know UCSD for one has this reputation of being very STEM based, very like not social science arts friendly, but it really is. And if you want to do visual arts and you really want to go to UCSD, you're almost like guaranteed admission because they want more people like you. Like they want to create a more diverse campus, and that's the goal. So like really when you're writing your college applications, and I know this is like super cheesy and everyone always tells you and it's hard to believe, but really like be yourself, like let your personality shine through. Like like we learn in high school and we learn from our parents that we need to write a certain way, we need to say things a certain way, and it's like, no, like this is you, like you're literally trying to persuade somebody to let you into the university and to do something you love and to like help you like push your future forward. So really don't be afraid of being very honest. Like of course there's like something to be said about like being honest to a point and like to like where it's advantageous to you and not disadvantageous to you. But yeah, like say what you want. Like if you want to talk about like how a pizza guy or like some kind of like I know this, I've heard this story for Harvard, like some kind of interaction you've had, like as small and as like kind of ridiculous as you think it may seem, if it's touched you, it'll touch your admission officers.
True.
Yeah.
True.
So it's like
there's going to be moments in life in which it just happens and something clicks. I know that I shared a story with the Mustang Robotics about one of the world-renowned physicists in the world. It was lucky he walked into class right when the teacher said this one specific little story. And his entire life changed from that one moment. And so what I'm hearing from you is, if you've ever had a moment like that, tell someone that. Like, don't hide that. Like, tell someone that you had this epiphany that that's what I want to study. Like I have figured it out 100%. I hate to tell you, this whole way I haven't been studying and getting ready for it, but now I know it. Now I know that's what I want to do. So you're working in the admissions. You give us good advice about that. Is there anything that makes you want to tell us something else about UCSD? Like what else jumps into your head that we need to know?
I just really like loved UCSD, like more than I thought it would. Like I know that I said it was like my dream college, but it's like, come on, like that was just something I got used to growing up. But it's like I'm very happy to say that it did not disappoint me. And I think a part of that was this whole idea that I was able to maintain this whole unexpectedly enjoying life in a way, just like Mustang Robotics, and like just like I mentioned earlier, where a lot of the things that I ended up enjoying were things I wasn't planning for. So like UCSD, I think because I wasn't under any kind of like pressure to be like super social in a way I wasn't comfortable with, or because I was able to immediately find people who were just like me in that mindset. Like I never ever felt pressure to do something I didn't want to do, and I never felt like I wasn't doing enough anymore. Like I didn't join student government as like a resume booster. It definitely helps, I'll say that, but I definitely would not put myself through that just to put it on my resume because it's a lot of hard work. Like you dedicate all of your free time to people who like don't even know your name. Yeah,
Trying to
government.
sell them a T-shirt, right, to raise some money. You want to
Yeah.
buy a shirt? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's and I feel like while I think I could have been happy in other universities, like UCSD was definitely a place that let me grow in the way that I wanted to, and even in the way that I didn't anticipate. Because it's really hard to describe, and I feel like those are the nicest moments where you just know something has touched you and you're not exactly sure how. And so like the way I like to look at that is that it was a combined experience of just being there, meeting the specific people there, because like the people you meet at UCSD are going to be different from the people you meet in like Berkeley or LA or Riverside.
Right.
And it's really just like not getting caught up, I think, also in the kind of like the branding of colleges. Like I know that a lot of people at UCSD are there because they didn't get into UCLA, and like that was consistently something I heard my first year. And then like I was just over there like UCSD is still like one of the top colleges in the nation.
Yes.
And so like really appreciating where you're at is also good. Like I honestly don't think I would have done well in like really competitive environments like Berkeley or LA. I like I only applied because my parents wanted me to apply to those. But UCSD is just like I said, it's great. It's this balance of getting that kind of like, hey, I went to UCSD, but also kind of like keeping your humanity and your sanity intact. Like there's a lot of things you sacrifice to get a degree. But there's a lot that you gain while getting that degree. And like let me tell you that like I'm so lucky to come out of college with more than my degree, because there's some people I know who like try so hard and like they become cum laude um and like they get all these honors, but they like have talked to me and they're like, I just feel like I should have like met people more. I should have tried new things. Like that's college, because when you think about it, college is kind of like your first step into adulthood and having to like deal with real world problems. Like even now, like having just graduated, I'm definitely still under my parents' wing. Like they're helping me a lot. Like and it's crazy, So it's like really for college, like really think about how you're gonna fit there. Like think about the resources that you'll have and that you won't have, and like whether it matters to you about like being independent, being on your own, or having people who love and support you nearby, but also who give you enough space to grow on your own. So there's definitely a lot more to consider aside from like, oh, what university is it? Where is it? How much? Well, definitely how much is actually really important. But and like your degree, like there's just so much, and I'm I'm kind of glad that it turned out this way because I wasn't considering that at all going to UCSD. Like yeah, like it just all turned out really well. So I hope
So what's
for
next,
you all doing
Annika?
it. Yeah.
What's next for you then? What's the plan for you? Are we going back to school? Are we taking a year off? Are we working? Are we creating candles? What's going on in life? And we
Um
might as well give an advertisement because everyone finds things that make them get through, correct?
uh
And so what are you finding right now in that in between time? That
mm,
because that's really where you're kind of at right now, right?
mm.
What's next for you?
Yeah, okay. So for starters, since we were talking about school, I actually graduated in 3 years on accident. I got a bunch of emails my fall quarter going into my third year, so fall of 2019, about like, hey, you're getting ready to graduate. Here's what you need to do. And I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean? And then like I was looking at my degree audit, and yeah, I was pretty much set. And so I am taking a year off of school, mainly because I wasn't able to apply that year. Because when it comes to graduate schools, as with like college, you need to apply the year before. So
Yeah,
if I wanted to start this fall, I should have applied last fall.
last year.
So right now, applications are starting to open up, and as I mentioned before, I'm looking into forensic psychology. And I guess to like
Could
briefly
you
touch on that,
describe what a forensic psychologist would do?
Yeah, so for like it has a lot of different routes, but what I'm most interested in is trying to reform like police recruitment, as like I'm sure a lot of you like know about the current climate regarding um the police and like other law enforcement. And there's a lot of things that like the government still doesn't take into consideration, and it's that like people's psychology really matters, and like how they perform a certain job. And I really want to highlight that in my career, and it's also kind of like my weird way of combining history and psychology. So like, as some of you may or may not know, I'm like a complete history buff. Like if I could have majored in history and I had like a really solid job, I would have done it. Like, I love it so much. So I want to take kind of like my practical side and be like, you need to stay in psychology, kind of, but also take something I love and try to combine it. Um, so yeah,
Because it's
like it's
easier to do that job when you have part of it that you just naturally love. Like
yeah,
that part will draw you in.
exactly.
And so my first thought was you were going to do something a little more like my sister and work for like a CSI or something like that. And
Yeah.
what you're actually, so that is part of what you could and could not do. And you would be able to actually work through crime scenes and develop the idea of exactly what happened, even though all you're looking at is bullet wounds, blood splatter, or something else.
Yeah.
There's a whole FBI camp that my sister went to, and like I don't know, and man, it creepy. I didn't want to hear about it. So here's where we're at in this sense. If for you guys out there in the crowd, Annika has been just one of the greatest resources for us since she's left Mustang Robotics. We're blessed that she's never really left. She shows up on Thursdays and Fridays. She shows up to help. She talks to us. She shows up to help us every year pick teams when she can. And she also does something for us that I just need to thank you again for, which is you show up on weekends when we're holding tournaments and you help us be able to have judges who actually understand what they're doing because of past experiences, and you give us the ability to have a great time. And so on more than one occasion, you've been at the art tournament helping me personally, been in state championships and everything like that. So I want to make sure that the entire VEX community says thank you to you, because not only did you grow up in it, but now you're supporting it on the other end. And I think what we want to do right now is just give a couple minutes here and see if our crew can formulate some of these questions, if there are any out there. And I have a feeling that we'll take a break for a second, and then Jacob will bring us back here in a second when they've got a couple questions ready to go.
Oh, but just to see, like this might have like additional questions, but like other stuff I'm doing right now is like I'm a COVID-19 case investigator for the county, so I currently have a job with the county. So like I'm like in touch with people and like trying to get like the health disparity among different populations in the county and how
So
like
if
they've
you
been
call
affected
me,
by
I
it.
could have met someone who had COVID, and you're trying to figure out if I'm
Yes.
sick. Oh
Yes.
God. Oh God.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And on the flip side, Mr. Pearson kind of hinted at it before. I'm actually approaching like the 1 year anniversary of a candle company I started, like a small local one, with my two cousins called Sent It Away. And I'm a nerd, so it's definitely anime inspired.
Cool.
So yeah, like if you're interested in that, like there's that too. Like we had to, like none of us were business majors or minors. Like we had never studied it before, so like that was another thing we had to learn too. So if you have any questions about like if that's something you're interested in, like I know a lot of people right now, like Leanne, are doing things like baking, like some fun quarantine stuff. But
Welcome
if
to
you're
the
looking,
quarantine stuff. Yes. How do we
yeah,
survive during a time where I'm locked in my house? Yes.
yeah. So yeah,
Um,
that's like just a couple. That's the other stuff I'm doing right now. Yeah.
Good. And so, if any of you guys need a candle to change the smell of your locker room smelling bedroom, boys, you're more than welcome to get an anime candle a la Annika over here from her website. But, guys, again, we're going to take a second. We're going to let the crew go through questions. So, at this time, if you have questions, please post them in the chat box. Allow the three different staff to work on the idea of arranging a couple of these questions for us, and we'll see what Annika has to throw at us here.
All right, guys. So now is the time to send your questions, and we will feed them to Mr. Pearson. All right, Mr. Pearson. So we're getting questions now. Corgiology asks, hi Annika, it's Gabs. What was your workload unit-wise to graduate in 3 years?
Ooh. Okay. It was definitely over 180 because I think that's the minimum amount of units you need to graduate from UCSD. But I think I ended up graduating with like 210, maybe. Yeah.
So if we were on a semester system, a lot of times like San Diego State has a single digit number for every hour you're in class, and then you're supposed to add more time afterwards to study. So if I carried what would be on average 12 units, that's considered a full load at San Diego State. That's 12 hours in class and about 12 hours of homework. How does that look for you in the idea of UCSD? Because what she explained to you guys earlier was everything's crammed into half of a semester, and you may not take as many classes during that quarter, but what you're taking is twice as fast, 3 times as fast, it feels like.
So a typical class is 4 units, and so typically people do between 12 to 16, so 3 or 4 classes, but I've seen like some people do 21. And it's crazy because a lot of it you have to consider too is the difference between lecture-based courses and lab courses. So like lab courses will require a lot more work from you because you like need to physically do things depending on it. So like for chemistry, you like actually have to do the labs. Like you have to pour in like this solution and like do that. But for like lecture-based ones, like maybe you just have to write some papers, and like from like math, more math lecture-based ones, it's things like actually for math, like the hard thing about math in university I've found is that it's different from high school in the way that you don't do problems in class and you like barely get homework. So you really just gotta learn it on your own. Yeah. So
math is definitely interesting in college. It's not a worksheet you get. It's a philosophical approach to math. It's more how you think about it than really do it. All right, that was excellent. And I think that gets us on that track of UCSD is really different than the way you process through high school, and that may be something students really want to look at, is that idea that it isn't like where you take 6 classes. You're taking that smaller group of classes and trying to get through faster. Oh my God, yeah. I used to remember my friends always complaining that they had to get ready for finals, and I was like, dude, we barely got started at San Diego State. We're only like halfway through the year. What are you talking about, finals?
Yeah, I know that like a lot of my friends at SDSU, they were going through their midterms and I was on my finals. So like in 1 quarter, I had gone through 2 finals.
Correct. All right, my friends, any other questions out there? Let's go.
Yes, we do. So we have an audience wondering, what was your most favorite memory from UCSD?
Ooh. These are those moments where you feel like 3 years went by fast, but then you realize it was actually pretty long. I would say my favorite moment from UCSD. Sorry, this is gonna take like a second. I really gotta filter it. I actually do think it would. I can't remember what exactly it was, but it was like one of these meetings I had for AS with my dean of the social sciences, because it was one of these moments that I realized that like as a student, this was one of the first times I was put in a position that you could make real change. Because like going into student government, even in college, I just kind of felt Like it was one of those like, oh, you just parade around and then like you just kind of host events for people and you don't do much. But I was talking to her about a project I had to bolster up the social sciences division to kind of like help these students who make up like I think 49% of UCSD's campus not feel overshadowed by STEM. And like we were talking about like initiatives and like this club and like a social science based student council. And it was just so interesting because she was like all for it. And she was like, oh, like, what if I do this? Like, I can help you and I can attend stuff. And it, like, I think it was one of my favorite memories because, like, I felt impactful. And it was like, you can do things that seem unreal to you. Like, you know, like you look at change happening on something as big as UCSD and you're like, that must be super hard to do. But it was like, it was this moment where I was like, I can do it if I want to. And I did.
I'm imagining
yeah.
you also felt very respected in the idea of this person with their authority or their stature
Yes.
or their position and
Mhm.
their experience putting you in an equal position.
Mhm.
That's an amazingly first hard thing to do as a leader. And that's very true and honest. So you had a very nice person you were with at that point because to share that leadership is very difficult to trust.
Mhm.
And so along the way, you must earn that person's respect. But the reward you got was they listened to you like you were an equal, and that's an incredibly wonderful privilege that you earned.
Yeah,
If you would
it
understand,
was.
I'm imagining that conversation did not happen with everyone that way. Um, Funny you said that because immediately I thought you were going to answer the chancellor just because it was like you talked to the chancellor,
Oh my God.
yeah,
That was a very fleeting moment,
a
but
very fleeting
I got to
moment.
do it. But you know, he's busy. He's super,
Yeah,
super busy. Like
I'm imagining.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, my friends, another question.
Yeah, Zach wants to ask that he remembers that you were always busy back to back throughout your university career, and he wants to ask, do you have any regrets keeping yourself so busy all the time, and do you wish you could have stayed in school longer?
Mad Zach. um yeah, that's actually a really good question. Because while I am so happy that I got to accomplish like this much in like the amount of time that I was at UCSD, there, like I mentioned before, there were a lot of like sacrifices I had to make, especially my second year, because that was the year I think I first started taking upper div. And for those of you who aren't like super well versed in how like college courses go, you take lower division classes, which are typically 2 digits, so like 20. Um, and it's like pretty, it's like kind of like high school level classes, just a little faster. And then you take upper div, which are more specialized and more rigorous. So my second year, I was just beginning to take um, my upper div classes. I had just started to work in my registrar's job, and then I had my position in the student council of ERC and AS. And so I like it taught me a lot, but I definitely struggled a lot with mental health there. I developed acute depression for that year. It was like hard to do things because I always felt like every time I went somewhere, I had to do things. And that was actually the year I saw my friends the least and my families the least because I was just always super, super busy. Like I remember my Google Calendars doc would have like no spaces between it except for when I would sleep. And then even then it's like I had to take that time to study because the rest of the day was filled with meetings. So I definitely kind of regret doing too much at once. Um, so I again highly recommend that you like listen to your mind, you listen to your body, and you take those breaks. And like even though like the reason why I ended up not dropping my student council position was because I felt like I had committed to it and I was in a role that like helped other students. So by me leaving my position, I was leaving somebody in the dust. Um, but yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, so like again, I would very much recommend like knowing where you're at, doing what's best for you. Like you'll only succeed as much as you have the capability to. Like rest, definitely rest.
One of
And
the things,
on
one of
that
the
note,
things
like
we've talked
yeah,
a lot about, Annika, is ask for help. And I
yes.
think you said that in a way, but also ask for help with the academic part early on in that freshman year when you
Mhm.
figure out that, oh my God, this isn't high school anymore. And oh my God, I'm not pulling it off. And for some of the kids we know and the ones that came before you, and I'm sure there's going to be future Mustangs who go off to college, will hear the stories that first semester was horrible from a kid who was our valedictorian or something. And it's very natural that I think what you went through is kind of that natural pathway a lot of students go through, which is you have ups and downs, you have emotional changes, you have to regroup, rethink
Mhm.
things, find a different direction because damn it, the way we did in high school does not work now.
Mhm.
But being able to kind of manage that stress level was something by your third year you felt a lot more confident saying, you know what, now after second year I got to get that out of the way.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think what's interesting is the part of the question I don't think you answered was, would you stay for like, do you miss the idea of not having a fourth year there? I think that's what Jacob's end part was kind of like now that you're gone and you're not there, are you kind of like regretting the idea of like, shit, I should have stayed one more year and just studied more?
I actually don't. There's a part like the only reason I would want a fourth year would be to continue my position in AS. Because so I was in this position twice and I ran through elections. And I would have done it again. But aside from that, no, like I don't want to take any more classes than I need to. My pacing of my courses is actually really good. Like I'm one of those people who just like has a knack for learning things and like I can learn things like the last second and then like execute it. Like I'm lucky in that way. Like if you know you struggle with that, like I do not do that. But yeah, like I got lucky in the sense that like academics wasn't like super hard for me. Uh but and it's also like significant, like we saved so much money of for me not going a
Yes.
fourth year. Like I really considered maybe adding a minor just to kind of like graduate when I'm ready,
Yeah.
but then I was like that's like $30,000.
There's a true
So
family dynamic to you and your family that
mhm.
um, yeah, I think that's a reality of a lot of the kids we get to work with in Mustang Robotics is we're already able to kind of think, you know what, it's not just about me. I still have the reality of my mom and my dad are involved with this, and we have kids that go to all schools all over the place. And
Mhm.
so I think what we're probably going to find in this symposium series with alumni coming back over the next couple of weeks is a lot of similarities and stories, a lot of
Mhm.
shared experiences that overlap. But regardless of what campus you go to, from our friends who go to MIT to our friends at UCLA to our friend who talked a couple of days ago from UC Berkeley to all the kids that are still at home in San Diego going to USD, SDSU, and our UCSD. We're going to all have our struggles and our ups and downs, and we're probably going to see a lot of it come out in conversation here because I know
Mhm.
my kids that are coming back are going to be honest with us. You guys have
Oh
another
yeah.
question for me? Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes, we have an audience wondering how did you avoid or deal with general burnout with the workload you had?
Yes, burnout is a real thing. I like honestly going into college, I was like, it's a conspiracy. Like people don't burn out. Like you know what you need in life. No, it definitely exists. I found out the hard way. And the way I dealt with it was even when I felt like I had so much to do, I made sure to keep time to myself. So if it was something as simple as like watching a movie or like being on the phone with like Christian, who was like my boyfriend in high school and still is now, or like my parents, like it's kind of like dealing with burnout is tricky because a lot of times when you're that busy, you feel like you don't deserve to like stop. And so you like the way I dealt with it was like making sure to like really sit myself down and being like, you need to eat. Like you've been doing this for a long time. Like go go out and have dinner. Like even though you think that going out and having dinner is going to make like a 10-minute meal an hour meal, like you need that. So like I definitely tried my best to see my friends on campus, go home and see my family and like my friends back at home as much as I could, because like it with like you really just need to find that thing that resets your energy. Like if that's sleep for you, sleep. Like if that's like playing a video game for a couple hours, like do that. But yeah, it was definitely like a lot of trial and error, because for like at first I thought that with burnout I had to like talk about it, like ugh, this is my stress, like kind of like therapy. And I found out that when I talked about things that stressed me out, it stressed me out even further. And so I had to like completely remove myself from situations that where I had to think about my extracurricular, where I had to think about my job or academics. So it was literally just like, I'm gonna watch this show and pretend nothing exists and I have like no other responsibilities. And it worked for me.
So you chose to replace and just turn off for a while the realities that you knew were there.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is knowing the kids that we work with and stuff. You can imagine that we're all very used in high school of not having to read books. I heard you say that earlier, and everything is just easy, and we do things without really trying, and we're excelling in AP classes. And I think that's that weird dichotomy of what we tell our AP students on campus is, you know what, you can excel and you can get all these great grades. Then how come we still watch all these kids feed into programs and have to run through all the emotionality of the stressors in life? And so did you ever find yourself wanting to come back to Otay and say hi to us?
Honestly, like, yeah. I mean, there's a reason that I totally still feel attached to Mustang Robotics. It kind of like reminds me of simpler times in a way, where it was like, nah, I want to write in this notebook and like fall asleep in biology and like be done with it. And then like, so yeah, like honestly, going back to like Mustang Robotics and thinking about Otay like had crossed my mind a lot. Well, not a lot, but like pretty like not, it wasn't rare, I guess is a good way to say it. Because there are like a lot of differences between how you stand in high school and how you stand in college, because I think one thing that happens to a lot of people is that you are like, you have it easy in high school, like you can like you're president of like 5 different clubs, and then like you have straight A's, and then you come into college with that expectation, and then when that expectation kind of gets broken, it like it hurts because you're just kind of like, oh, I'm not as like as good as I thought I was, and that's not it at all. It's just that you're in a different environment.
Your porcelain image was shattered. Like the concept of who you were was more breakable than you ever thought, because you entered an environment with people that were equal or above you. Like that's what we hear from people is you jump into college and you're surrounded
really no
by
joke. Yeah, because like you go and like, for example, like if you're a valedictorian, and like just to clarify, I was not a valedictorian. Like you're valedictorian and it's like you go into college, there's 100 more of you there. So it's like honestly, the biggest thing with going back to burnout and kind of balancing stuff and not having like your own expectations, like your own image kind of shatter upon impact, it's flexibility and adaptability is really important. Like when you fall, like take it. Like it's gonna hurt, it's gonna happen, no one can avoid it and no one can brace themselves against it well, but it's like you can bounce back. Like you have
So if you get your first C, you should just go with it and then be like, oh, well, I got my first C I've ever got in my lifetime. I'll be okay.
Yeah, in college, especially when like professors aren't super straightforward with how they curve. I thought I was gonna fail a class. And I cried. Like I was like, oh my God, it's my first year and I'm already failing a lower division class. I did not, because I ended up getting an A in that class because he curved so intensely.
Yes.
But it's like, it's definitely when like after that, I was like, that was dumb. Why did I cry? And
Well,
it's one of those things too where you just like you just need to get hit once and then the rest of it is fine.
But you actually hit on something that's super interesting and true, which is one of the most beneficial things you could do as a new person on campus is find someone who's been there a year or two, who's ahead of you in the same thing you're studying, and can explain the teachers and what's going to happen in a class that you're about to take. because if you would have had a heads up on that teacher having this different grading plan, the entire time you wouldn't have been teared up and ruining your pillow. You would have been more
Yeah.
like, oh, wait a second. I know at the end this guy's got this system
Yes.
that's different.
Mhm.
And that unique grading scale in college is incredible. Your cousin Leanne explained to us, I believe it was Leanne, the bell curve that some people use, where you just basically say the top, the top score is going to be my only A. My
Yes.
next 3 scores will all be A minuses, and my next 5 scores will be B pluses, and the next 10 after that or 20 will be regular Bs.
Mhm.
And maybe you don't have any Ds or Fs.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, college is different, and your professors are not going
Yeah.
to be like as straightforward as you would hope. You
And
would
they're
really hope.
very they're very independent, and they think how they want to think,
Oh yeah.
and for better or for worse, because you're in high school and it's pretty much the same across the board. Like, for example, like Mr. Aguilar was the same as like I don't what did she change? Miss Sistar. Mrs.
Yeah.
Sistar. Like, they were pretty much the same. Like, one taught English, one taught math, but they were like, they pretty much taught like the same way. And then you get to college, and then like there are some professors that are like so unfair. Like, I had one of my friends get a lower grade so she could fit into the bell curve because people unexpectedly scored higher. Yeah, so they'll do that to you. Like, some of them will do that to you.
Just
And
slide
then
you right down into a lower grade.
yeah,
There you go. Here's
yeah,
your
just
gift
to
from
fit
me.
the pattern. And then there's some professors who like don't really care what you do, because in college it's not the professors themselves who look at your grades, really, it's TAs. So
TAs.
like, make sure to be nice to your TAs.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
they're
Bring a
the ones
coffee to
who,
your. We used to
yeah.
joke about bringing coffee to your TA every day.
Mhm.
And these are teachers' assistants, guys, who are traditionally kids who are in their 3rd or 4th year. They're probably getting paid for it, and what they're doing is grading papers, organizing, and basically a college professor at UCSD most likely has his mind set more on research and what they would like to try to figure out in the world. And then the reason that they get to do that research is half of their day is spent talking to kids and being teachers. And so kind of understand they're not really sometimes teacherish. They're not really even sometimes personable. And every once in a while, and I'm imagining at your campus in the engineering department, you cross people that have minimal personality traits who actually may scratch on having autism or Asperger's. And some of the most brilliant minds in the world in engineering are going to have some very unique ways of interacting, which means minimal interactions. You have to get very used to your teachers and figuring out how you interact to get the most out of them. Hey, Annika, do you think a good example of this is the difference, like me as a mentor and maybe some other mentors, and how I just walk away from y'all during competition? Like that whole idea, like, where did he go? I need his help. And why is he the only
Yes.
person?
And even with that, Mr. Pearson is much more present than any professor. Like, he disappears. Like, I know it's especially like recently where like I know that like when I would visit, you would just kind of like disappear for a while, and then like I'd ask one of the students to be like, oh, I think he had a meeting, and I was like, oh, okay. Like even that, you're way more present than most professors, because professors, they come in, they lecture, they might stay for your questions, and then they'll dip.
They may not even say hello when they walk in. They just start
Yeah.
scratching the pen on the board and they start writing, and you're like, oh, I guess class started.
Yeah.
Hey guys, next question. Because in all honesty, Annika's given us our time, and we're an hour and 20 into this. So pick a couple good ones, and then we'll let Annika also enjoy her night too.
Okay,
Go
the
ahead,
next
Sophia.
question from the audience is, how long did it take you to really adjust to the new environment at UCSD?
Not long, actually. Because I think like going into it, I already had this mentality that it was going to be different. So once you accept that things are going to change and you need to change with it, it comes much easier. So it has to do a lot with like kind of being stubborn about it sometimes, or you're just like, no, I got this before, so I can do it now. But like knowing your limits. So it's much easier than you'd think, as long as you let it, I guess, is a good way of saying it. And everyone's different. So like, don't be worried if like you end up having trouble adapting to it, because it's like there are different things that you might have trouble adapting with that I didn't. Like, if anything, I had more trouble in the social aspect, where I was like, okay, I'm not sitting in a class with friends or like people I've known for a couple of years. Like, when you go to class, you sit there and then you leave. Like, nobody wants to stay in a class longer than they need to. So that kind of relationship of like turning to your like seatmate and being like, hey, do you understand this, isn't entirely present because you don't have those opportunities to talk to people next to you, because like your professors are there for like an hour and a half maybe, to lecture to you, and they'll spend that whole time lecturing to you. So that one took me a bit longer, because I was like, oh, I actually have to like really put myself into situations to make friends. That sucks. But yeah.
What's interesting is your social aspect of the second year allowed you to start to bond with people and stuff and get there. We did have Alexa Gill explain to us at UC Berkeley. She joined some of those clubs to help her out that were the multiple ethnicity clubs, you know, and she was like, oh, I felt like I had my culture around me and stuff. But that's a great answer. One of the things we do want you to kind of understand, guys, is she's answering this in the most honest way possible. The aspect of the change of environment wasn't necessarily what was the negative thing on her. It was her emotional response to the pressure and stress of being successful. And that's a psychological psyche thing that my young lady now understands better than me, even though I walk with that little degree of psychology. She's up me and trumped me on this, but you can see by her smile that that's a good way of explaining this. Walking on campus and feeling like you were a young adult who's going to college wasn't the issue. What actually was the issue was going home at night and feeling like you could accomplish what that dream of being a college student was. And that pressure felt overwhelming. And that pressure to succeed, and that idea that is who you are personally, that A+ student all the time, guys, that's what's going to kill you. When you enter college, if you try to live up to that same expectation, and I've been talking a lot to my Mustangs about don't take senior year off, especially distance learning, because you're going to build this image of someone who really, guys, you aren't. And Annika can attest to this. She built this image in her mind of being this functional student with that who didn't have to read, and really she had to modify that a little bit. And the honesty, guys, is I work with an entire group of you, and I did it myself. I don't know if I took my high school books home and read them. There's some honesty there. But I know in college things changed for me. And I know that first year I was in the writing lab. And I know that first year I was asking for help from anyone who wanted to listen. Trust me, anyone who wanted to listen, because that's just the way I am. And so, Annika, again, thank you for all this honesty, because I think for people who really, truly are trying to apply your information, maybe they can start thinking about how they avoid that being that stressful to them. Or the idea of changing your imagination that it's okay to be a C student when you put 100% effort in it and you have all these life stresses. So, guys, another question for her?
No, our audience are fine.
Excellent, excellent. And I think out of respect, I did tell them we weren't going to keep you all night. So I kind of said that a second ago. And so even guys, if there are more questions out there and you guys are disappointed, please realize that at my direction, we don't want to keep Annika too long tonight. But at this point, guys, we would love to say thank you very much to Annika for her time. Being an alumni with Mustang Robotics brings on extra responsibilities when Mr. Pearson calls, but I don't think I had to ask very much. I don't think I had to put much pressure. As soon as I asked the alumni if they wanted to do this year, I would imagine Annika and Leanne and a couple other kids were the first to respond. And ladies and gentlemen out there, if you're listening, over the next few weeks, we plan on holding more of these meetings. We would love to expand them out. So if you're out there and you hear we're having one of these interactions with a past Mustang alumni, please bring your friends, join us. We're going to try to have them every Friday night. Right now, it looks like we have a gentleman named Steven Salazar who may come next Friday night with us. He is a UCSD graduate who graduated from the Jacobs School of Engineering. He had some time working in the aerospace industry, and now he's starting his own company with 3D printers. And we would proudly say Stephen is we would claim him as a founding member of Mustang Robotics. So from my students out there, please understand this only gets better. Annika starts us off in a great spot of coming back and helping us start to realize what those first year and a half, 2 years of college could look like, and that feeling of what Mustang Robotics gave her and she took along. And we would welcome you back in a week for us to have our next episode. And so again, Annika, thank you very much for being here. And ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your night and please stay safe.
People try, it's the first thing they do. Only different, it happens to you. Only makes sense when speaking to you, but it got away. Michael